I'm so excited to be with you guys today, Dawn, with Healist, and we are here to discover new ways to heal. And I have my first guest today on our Healist podcast, and it's Whitney Yarnall. And before I turn it over to Whitney, I want to tell you a little bit about her. So, Whitney is a healing artist, intuitive somatic, alchemist, and space holder who leads transformative containers, retreats, and group healing experiences. Her work focuses on guiding you to uncover and integrate shadows, patterns, outdated beliefs, and traumas that may limit your joy, truth, and full authentic expression. Believing that healing, like wounding, often occurs in community, she creates space for deep collective transformation. Whitney's offerings blend various healing tools and the wisdom of the body to support you in designing the life of your dreams. Oh, I love that. Oh my gosh. So I personally know Whitney. When I used to live in San Diego, Whitney and I go way back. We've done many things together. We've led retreats, we've led workshops. We just led our most recent retreat in Peru over the summer. And I met Whitney through, I believe I was leading a new moon workshop years ago, and she came and we just connected. And then she opened her own healing community yoga center in San Diego called Sojourn. And then the rest is history. We've been in this healing arts and doing all sorts of stuff. Whitney, I'm so happy to have you. Welcome.
I'm honored to be here. Thank you.
Yeah, and I wanted to ask you before we dive in, just for everybody to understand, because I think it's so different for from everybody's perspective. What is your definition of healing?
Oh my gosh, it's such a great question because I think it's evolved over the years. Currently, I would say my definition of healing is completing the past so that we can actually be present and move forward. And to me, it's become a lifestyle. Like it's really learning my own shadows, triggers, patterns, things like that, and handling them as they come up. So it doesn't have to be an isolated thing that I'm going to heal this. It's like your life is just dictating what's the next thing that you would need to look at and resolve.
That's amazing. So for our listeners, when that comes up for you, what is the first thing that you do? Is I'm sure you have a whole process that you help people through, but just what is something that if somebody notices that they're having like a really tough day, and typically I know a lot of my clients when they're having a tough day, sometimes they want to push it aside and just go focus on the positive, but what would you recommend for them?
I would recommend allowing whatever emotion and whatever material is coming up within you to actually move all the way through you. So sometimes that's not possible in the moment. Let's say you're getting really triggered at work. It's noticing that and coming back to it later and being like, what do I wish I could have done? Would it be to express anger, to cry? What would complete that to allow it to run all the way through my system? And do that on your own in your own space, like have an anger practice or a grief practice or a fear practice or whatever that is. So it can look different for every person, but really like tending to yourself like you would a child.
Yeah, I love that. That's so important because I think so much in our culture we're taught to just get on with it, just to move forward and not deal. And I think that's what causes so many emotional blockages or stuck energy is that we might have years of repressing different things and then inevitably it's going to come up because energy can never be destroyed, right? That we know that it'll eventually make its way towards right up and want to be dealt with.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So what initiated you on your own healing journey?
Hmm. Um, Going way back, I would say it really the pivot point for me was in my teen years where I was dealing with a lot of shadow material. I was a very rebellious teenager after years of being the good girl, the quiet one, the one that had no needs. And my teen years led me into a lot of grief and a lot of anger. I
Hmm.
had a person very close to me, one of my first loves, pass away at 16, and that was really what sent me into despair
Yeah.
and and prompted my healing journey. And I spent some time there in in the darkness and eventually got to a point where I was like, I can either live here and this is my life now, or I can decide and claim that there's a different path for me. And so what that looked like, at the time I was seeing mental health professionals, getting medication, kind of going the traditional route.
Hmm.
Um, and then I decided medication was not supporting me. It was actually like really felt really dangerous for me. I like wasn't feeling anything and decided
So you were kind of, you felt numb.
I felt completely numb, like I was just a robot going through the world. And I do believe in medication. Like it did support me for a period of time, but it got to a point where it felt like I wasn't living. And so I decided I wanted to look into other ways to come out of that without medication. And so that led me down a deep rabbit hole of exploring um, through my late teens, early 20s, things like Ayurveda, Reiki, yoga, meditation, various healing modalities that honestly I had never heard of before. I like had to do my own research with it. Um, and then I started feeling better. I started doing yoga and realizing like, oh, I can actually like cry on my yoga mat. I can have experience moments of like bliss and actually start to feel it was like a thawing of
Wow.
emotion and ways that I had been repressed and numbed. Um, and so I saw it work and it was really incredible. And I wanted to know more. I was like, why is this not more mainstream?
Mm-hmm.
So as time went on, I just became really in love with the healing journey and curious and excited to find new ways to unpack, to resolve, to complete what didn't get to happen in my early life.
Wow, that is amazing. I love the fact that you didn't just settle for what could be like, okay, I'm on medication, this is what I'm supposed to do, that you really got curious within yourself and thought, there's got to be more. I'm not supposed to feel numb. Because I think a lot of our listeners probably at some point might have gotten diagnosed with take this medicine, do this thing. And I think that to your point, it can be fantastic. It could be so helpful. And a lot of the times it doesn't go to the root. It's more of it can be a band-aid and it can temporarily help you. But it's asking those deeper questions and getting really curious as to why did this show up even in the first place? What is this wanting to reveal to me about myself? So I love the fact that you took that path and figured out. So how did you even find Ayurveda and yoga and all these things in the beginning?
Mm, That's a really good question. I was reading blogs and things like that. I was like Googling and signing up for people's newsletters and things like that, watching YouTube videos. And really, I feel like going to these like undiscovered parts of the internet where it
Wow.
at that time was very hippy dippy and like um I don't know, not mainstream at all. And so it was just like collecting little things along the way, like reading people's journeys and about the body and about their mental health and things like that. So I can't remember. I know I found yoga through when my uncle passed away in my early 20s. I think I was like right around 20. My boss sent me home for the day and was like, "Oh, just go take care of yourself." And I was like, "I don't think I can go home. Like, I don't want to just be alone right now." And so I found a yoga class, like when I was living in New York City, found a yoga class in the middle of the day. And that's where I went and processed some of my grief and then became really in love with that practice of moving my body and having a space to release.
Wow. And you said that we heal in community. So is that part of the reason why you wound up opening up Sojourn?
Definitely. Yeah,
Hmm.
I over several years when I was visiting spaces like yoga communities, um, sound healing, meditation spaces, I was searching for a place that really felt like true belonging.
Hmm.
I didn't have to be alone in navigating my own healing and also exploring different modalities of healing. It just felt very isolated. And I think I'm sure there were wonderful yoga spaces or healing spaces that I didn't come across, but I wasn't finding what I was looking for.
Hmm.
And so I decided, I mean, it came through initially as just like, wouldn't it be cool if this existed? And then as time went on, it was like, well, I think I might have to create that then.
Yeah. I don't remember in San Diego there being a center, a place like yours. There wasn't, I think you kind of started opening that up for other people, but there was yoga studios, but I didn't know of anything where there was actually all these different healing workshops and all these different practitioners coming in to, for a seeker to experience all these different things. And it was just so when I lived in San Diego, it was so incredible to get to go experience that and learn all these different things. So I think it's so beautiful how you've supported people to heal in so many different ways, which I know probably ignited and inspired you to do even your own, become a practitioner and do your own healing work. So, what is your modality and medicine that you offer to your clients?
My current modality, I would say, if I was like diluting it down to one thing, is somatic work and
Hmm.
really dealing with the body and the subconscious mind and the connection between the body and the mind. Um, I use a lot of different tools that I've acquired over my journey as a healer. Sorry, my puppy is needy.
No puppy. We both have puppies.
Yeah.
We
I know.
know about little puppies.
Um, so I also lead breath work, yoga, movement, sound healing, and I blend all these tools, in a way that really support people to move through whatever is coming up in their body and whatever their blockage is, so that they can resolve the past and move forward.
Hmm. When it comes to the body, I think so many people think of the body as kind of as just its own. I don't almost, you mentioned a robot earlier, like moving through life like a robot. And I know even in my own healing journey, there were many, many, many years where I just focused on my thoughts and I got to change my thoughts. I got to change these things, but I really didn't focus so much on my body and how I felt. And it wasn't until I went into my body and started to experience what was happening that I really felt like I was truly on a deeper path to healing. So when people think of the body and they hear this from us, our listeners, what do you mean by the body? Can you kind of go deeper into that?
Yeah, so our body stores everything that's ever happened to us, in our tissues, in our cells, and the way that I learned about somatics and body-mind connection is that the body actually holds what's in the subconscious mind as well.
Mhm.
So that being the case, there's a lot, in our culture where many of us didn't learn how to process our emotions and how to run our energy and our emotional the things that come up for us in our lives. And so the body is so intelligent and loving that it just stores it somewhere in our tissues. And so that's operating in the form of a limiting belief, a coping strategy, some type of holding pattern in our body. Like if we brace, if you notice that when you're responding to emails, your shoulders are tight and your hips are kind of tight. Like those are the ways that our body's protecting us and holding on to energy that never got to be completed. So that's the way that I look at the body, is that it's actually storing a lot of information for us. And if we don't go back and kind of allow those things to run, those big charges, those traumas and experiences, then they can't actually be integrated and completed. And then we're moving in the world, and our life becomes kind of a way that it's trying to resolve through the world and through our relationships. And so we're attracting in these situations, these people, these experiences that are looking to resolve these things for us. But if we go into the body and we actually sit with it and understand what's happening and allow these experiences to be completed and dealt with, then
Hmm.
our life actually becomes more peaceful, more beautiful, less triggered, and we can attract in more and more beauty and abundance. And that's not to say negative things won't happen to us. Like that's our curriculum in this human
Yes.
body.
Hmm.
But it just can really help you with your quality of life.
Oh, yeah. And I love how you just explained it. It's so beautiful. And I think that so much of our lives, our early lives, we're just operating from these ways of being that helped us deal and cope with whatever happened, whatever we experienced, whatever trauma, whatever situations or circumstances we were brought up in. And you can go for a really long time in your life with a specific coping mechanism. Maybe, for example, it's not speaking up, not being your authentic self because you were always hushed or you always were kind of talked over by your parents or something that might not even be that big of a trauma. But in reality, it created a way that you started to operate or behave because of that. And then what I find is one day that individual wakes up and whether it's through the fact that they might have some autoimmune issue that started that is correlated because they weren't speaking their truth. They have thyroid issues. That's more of a physical stance, but there's ways that they don't, how to speak their truth. And they wake up and they're like, this isn't working for me anymore. And they, like you said, maybe they've attracted a bunch of situations at work or in relationships where people undermine them or they're not able to speak up. And what's so amazing through the work that you're doing is that you're helping them to move that needle and not operate in the same ways that they used to not react to these situations in the same way. By it sounds like you're helping them find safety, right, within themselves so they can start to release the charge. Because for our listeners, right, that's what's when you feel in your body when somebody says something to you that really upsets you, there is a charge. There is a sense, a feeling very visceral that lives in your body that gets awakened in these moments, right? And it's so easy to lose yourself to that. Don't you think, Whitney? It's like before you know it, you could just kind of go on automatic pilot and be like, I'm mad. And then if you've never really worked on yourself, that one thing that person said to you at work, let's just say that upset you, where you didn't get to speak your truth, highlights and kind of the whole time of your past where you didn't get to speak your truth all the way to your early childhood where you're 3 years old and you were always hushed and said not to act that way or talk that way.
Yeah.
All of that is the charge.
Hmm.
Would you agree with that?
Yeah, 100%. That's really what a trigger and a charge is that it's often not the material of the present moment. It's what is the backlog of need underneath. Um, I think it's Gabor Mate that says it's the explosive material that you've never actually processed and dealt with. And I think that we become so, for lack of a better word, our body becomes addicted to the patterns that we've created to cope. And so there is this reflexive coping strategy that we have of either, it could be running away, cutting someone off, like whatever our body wanted to do, fight, flight, freeze, fawn. And that is a pattern that's really deeply ingrained for many of us from early, early life. And so the trick or the invitation is to look at that pattern and not do the thing that our body reflexively wants to do,
Oh, that's big.
which
Yeah.
is much easier said than done.
Yes. And to your point, I think a lot of people don't even know what their patterns are because it's unconscious for the most part. So,
Yeah.
how would you tell somebody if they, obviously, I'm sure in your work, that's what you're helping them do is to start to identify those patterns. But what is something that could be supportive of them noticing where they might have a pattern that is interfering with their life?
I think it's really the first step is noticing, becoming conscious of when you don't feel good or that you are showing up in a way that doesn't feel authentic or leaves you in this kind of feeling of an emotional hangover or something like that. It's noticing, reflecting on what happened. Okay, this person did this, and then I did this, and that didn't feel good in my body. So is this a pattern? Is this something that I always do? For me, fawning was a really big thing, which is reflexive people pleasing. And so I would notice I would just like part of my body would shut off and I would say yes, or I would appease someone in some way. And then I would be like, what the hell? I really did not want to do that, or I really regret saying yes to that. And so I'm having to sit with my body and look at, oh my gosh, when was the point that my like decision making turns off and my body says yes before I can even be conscious of it. And so I'm just tracking that within myself. And over time, as you're able to see it more and more, you can build in a new strategy. So it might be like, let me get back to you on that. And
Mhm.
then doing what you need to do within yourself to come to a place where you can form a boundary or have your no or whatever that might be. So that's
Mhm.
just an example.
I love that. And it sounds like it requires presence.
Absolutely.
In a
100%.
in a in a world where we have everything at our fingertips, where we could absolutely be distracted,
Mhm.
I think that slowing down and just what you're saying, just paying attention.
Mhm.
There is a wealth of information that is within us. Life is always directing back to us what we're working on. And so I think when someone wants to see their patterns, like you said, notice the discomfort, notice where there's something happening in their life that they don't like, and always be willing to ask the question, what, if you believe in God, source, higher power, universe, what is happening that might be in my blind spot that I really need to work on? And it might seem kind of like a silly question, but those type of questions do support you. And then life will start to show you. You might, the very next day find yourself in an argument with somebody and go, oh, here it is. This is the thing that I need to work on. So we're always being so supported. And one of the things that I absolutely love about what you're talking about is that you're identifying these patterns, but on the other side of this, you were saying that people can have more joy or more peace or even step more into authenticity. And isn't that the amazing? And why is that, Winnie? Why can somebody, if they work on these things, be able to step into having more of those feelings?
Well, it's really building a capacity to feel emotion all the way through. And so, unfortunately, or fortunately, that begins with resolving our pain. And if we
Mhm.
can learn to be with discomfort and pain and our own patterns and be willing to look at these things, it opens up the other side of the spectrum, which is joy and abundance and peace and bliss or whatever it is to you.
Mhm.
It's all on a spectrum. And so in blocking our willingness to feel, to see, to experience those less desirable emotions, we're also blocking the more desired ones.
Oh, yeah. And pain is such a portal. I have found when I go into my pain and I sit with it, and it's not easy, but that thing that I always see, I almost imagine in my mind, pain is like a big wave. And when I'm in it, it feels like it's a tsunami that's coming and it's just going to knock me down and obliterate everything around me. And what I have actually found it to be is more of a wave that, yeah, it might kind of rock me. I might feel a little bit wobbly when I'm dealing with it, but I'm able to stand firm and I'm able to withstand it and move through it. And I think that was my biggest fear. I think that's, I'm sure for a lot of our listeners, that's one of the biggest concerns about dealing with pain is they think they're going to get sucked into it and never get out of it. But with the proper tools and with the proper uh, mindset and being able to stay in your body, like you're saying, there's so much opportunity. And we're designed, we're literally designed as humans to deal with pain and pleasure, not just pleasure. I think people think that our lives, a really great life is one where we're just always happy and everything's working out. And it's actually pain and being able to deal with it that gives us such an incredible context for life.
Yeah. And not just the small moments of joy, like the little dopamine hits or the immediate gratification, but what I've learned is the spectrum of joy and pleasure is so vast and incredible that, I mean, I say in my bio, like living a life of your dreams, I mean, like beyond your dreams, like beyond what you can even imagine is possible. If you're willing to go into the depths of your body and your pain, you can have so much more than you can even dream of.
Oh, I love that so much. What has it opened up for you?
Oh my God.
Because I
I,
know you've been really an actualizer of dreams becoming reality. I've witnessed that as your friend. Because one thing I will say about Whitney, um, there are lots of different people that are practitioners, but Whitney does the work on herself. She's been actively having her own journey behind the scenes so that she can serve at her highest levels. And what's so beautiful to witness is how you actualize things. So I'd love for you to just share a couple of things that have happened for you from your healing journey.
yeah, thank you. I think that's one of my deepest values is doing the work and then weaving it into supporting others. And it's just this continuous flow of working on my own stuff and then serving and then going back in and it's yeah, I think that's the path of an integrated healer who's in
Mm.
integrity. And what's opened up for me since I've really committed to that aspect of life to like being integrated is my most prized thing is my relationships and the quality of connection and belonging that I've found in my friendships, in my partnership, in my business relationships. Um, I just never knew that this level of support and love and connection existed before. And that took a lot of vulnerability, a lot of work coming out of codependency or codependent patterns and familial patterns and things like that. So that's one of the things that's opened up and one of the most special things in my life. Um, and the other thing is really being able to like work with God and the universe in
Mm.
calling in what I need next. Like we'll call it manifestation, being able to um to call things in that will support me and be like a stepping stone into the next evolution that I have. So I've been able to manifest a beautiful home, um, my work environment, like having
Your work is pretty dreamy.
Yeah,
We're
and
just in Bali, and you are traveling a lot with all your retreats that you host, Costa Rica, Peru, all over the place.
it's such a dream, and it's a lot of work too, but
Yes.
it's
I
what
know because we've done it together. So, yeah,
but it's what
good
I always
work.
wanted. Yeah, like really being able to travel and then also be of service. Like what a gift.
Oh, yeah. And you're such a beautiful example of creating through your desire and being willing to do the work to have what you want. And when I say the work, people might hear that and think, oh, I have to do all this hard work. And yes, sometimes it might feel hard, but it's really this what I mean by that is just this openness towards life, really trusting life and having faith that what you want wants you to energetically, and that these desires that were planted in your heart, that's why I love hearing how you were initiated into healing, because hearing your story about how you had your own kind of awakening and finding yoga and then starting your studio and doing all these different things, it's beautiful to witness how it is a very integrated path. If someone is new to healing, what advice would you give them if you were looking back at yourself all those years ago and you were just getting started out on your path? What would you tell them that could be really supportive?
I think it goes back to what you were talking about a few moments ago about not being carried away by the waves. So
Yeah.
it's about forming this core stability. And to me, the first step is safety. Like, how do you find safety in your body? What parts of you are still running at unsafety, or what environments do you feel unsafe in? And learning to support yourself to find safe spaces, safe people, resourcing yourself so that you can actually open up and be vulnerable with yourself, maybe with others when the time comes. And
Mhm.
that's really like the entry point, I believe. We're not going, or my advice is not going straight into, the most traumatic thing that's ever happened to you, but it's dancing around it until your body feels safe enough to actually process these things at a deeper level. We're just like building ground underneath ourselves, learning to hold ourselves.
That is amazing that is very amazingly supportive, is what I want to say, because I've never thought about it like that. But if you just go in straight for the kill, to the hardest part of your journey or the most trauma, it could be a real turnoff. It could be really hard because you haven't learned how to even hold that energetic charge yet. And so it could repel you from wanting to do the work because it's tough to go into that. So I love that so much, to start around kind of the peripheral and work on those things. And as you build safety, then you can go into the deeper pieces. That's huge. That's really huge. Thank you for that. My last question, and this is more of a fun question because I just know, because we're soul sisters, that you've tried so many different healing modalities over the years. And I would just love to hear, what are a couple of your favorites that have really stood out for you?
I think I will always say somatic healing.
Mhm.
It's been life-changing for me. I work with a one-on-one practitioner pretty much weekly. Um, and it's similar to therapy. It's just whatever is moving in my own body, in my own system. It might be related to the past or the present, being able to resolve that and collect these parts of myself so I can feel whole.
Mhm.
Somatic healing is number one for me. Like body-based movement. So that might be yoga or walking, or for me, it kind of shifts with my lifestyle or the seasons or whatever. But learning to move your body in a way that you're actually experiencing it. You're not numbing, like going to a gym with really loud music and just like move
Yeah.
your body in a unconscious way, but or a way that it just is not supportive, but
Mhm.
actually like dancing, moving through yoga practice in your own space. That's another really big one. And I mean, this isn't really a modality, but community. It's
Oh, yeah.
it's like the biggest, one of the biggest things for me. And whether that's your support system that you continue to build and refine, or if it's joining a space virtually or in person, just having that ability to have reflection, validation from others, people that are on a similar journey and are really understand and want to understand what's happening with you. I think that's one of the most healing things.
I agree. And I would say, for someone who has spent a lot of time myself working on Zoom or alternatively getting to be in community with people hands-on, there is something completely magical that happens when people are together. It's almost as if the energy just kind of it amplifies or expedites something, and there's just so much more movement. I mean, I love one-on-one work for people too, because they might, if they're dealing with deeper parts of their trauma and using that, you getting in community as another tool to really support that because it's just so fun. I wholeheartedly agree with you. Um, Whitney, if somebody wants to work with you, is there something that you're offering right now? Of course, we're going to put all her information in the show notes, but is there anything right now that could be supportive for the listeners?
Yes, I have a program called The Quest, and it's a customized blend of one-on-one work, a monthly community group, um, and medicine journey work. And so that's customized to you and is I'm enrolling on an ongoing basis until February. So that's
Okay.
and I have two retreats coming up, one in Sedona, January 23rd to 27th. I just have one spot left, I believe, for
Ooh, somebody better snag it.
that spot. And Costa Rica is coming up June 7th through 13th of 2025. One of my favorite retreat locations. It's so beautiful. And we work on grounding. We work on some of the things that we just talked about, on really building a solid foundation for our healing and our life to take place. So we build that core stability that is unwavering in the painful times, the harder experiences, and even the joy. So that's coming up too. And would love to have you at one of these retreats or in a group container. And I'm sure I'll put more things out soon so you can follow me on Instagram too.
Love it. You guys definitely follow Whitney on social media. She is one of the most genuine healers that I've ever come across. I've met healers all over the world, and she really does walk her walk and talk her talk. That saying. She's the real deal. So check her out. Whitney, thank you so much for being on our Healist podcast today, and I look forward to seeing you again in the future.
Thank you, Dawn, and everyone for listening. It's such an honor to drop in with you.
Have a great day, and for our listeners, have a great week.